Howdy, Connection Group leaders. Happy Thursday. I hope you're doing well. I am rapidly and anxiously and excitedly getting ready for our next student mission trip. As you saw this past Sunday, me and a bunch of the students are going to New Boston on Sunday. We get to leave a worship service for a bunch of folks down there and serve at Mission Arlington, so we're excited about that. So pray for us, pray for the college team. They leave for Beach Reach the same day we do. We leave on Saturday, they leave on Saturday. And then the children's ministry team, they are starting their service on Monday at Mission Arlington. So please, please, please continue to pray for our mission teams. You're going to have about 70 of our students from college ministry on down to the children's ministry who are out serving this week. It's incredible. So thank you for your prayers. This week in your classes, a lot of you are talking about abilities from the second session of the Laughing Place. And I wanted to share with you just really quickly, truly quickly, actually what I shared with the students last night. We've been studying Hebrews 11, so we started talking about David last night. And man, this popped out at me just bigger than ever before, probably because this is what we've been talking about on Sunday mornings. But in chapter 16, that's when David's anointed as king, right? Saul's been rejected. Samuel is upset because, man, I told you this was going to be bad, and it was bad. And God says, dude, buck up, right? Man, I've got a plan. Are you ready to start serving again? Samuel says, yes, Lord. Says, okay, you go and you anoint the next king of Israel. So he goes to David's family. They go through that whole big rigmarole, and it really is pretty fascinating. God picks the youngest child of the 8. David is somewhere between the ages of 13 and 15. He is a young dude. In fact, his family saw him as so irrelevant, they didn't even bother calling him in for dinner when the prophet came to town. Like, this is how they viewed him, right? And on the same token, Samuel's kind of thinking the same thing too. Right? Remember, the reason why Saul got picked as king was because he was literally taller than everybody. And so when the oldest child of Jesse walks in, it says he was tall and handsome, and Samuel said, this has got to be him. Samuel's judging people the same way too, but God views the world in a totally different process. You all know this. But here's what's interesting to me. They anoint David king. It's right there towards the end of chapter 16. They anoint David king, and then immediately Samuel just leaves. Like, there's no information, there's no plot or plan given to him. Hey, you're going to be king in 5 years or 20 years or whatever. It's just, man, you've been anointed king of Israel. See you later. How is this going to play out? What on earth are you doing, Lord? Well, then we're given the answer. When you start reading at verse 14 to the end of the chapter, it mentions the fact that an evil spirit came upon Saul. And Saul's advisors said to him, you've got this evil spirit, and the only thing that calms down an evil spirit, by the way, I don't know how they knew this, again, has to be the Lord. They said, so let's get somebody who can play a harp, and if someone can play a harp well, the evil spirits will leave you alone. And so then they put out word, hey, does anybody know a good harp player? And out of nowhere, somebody says, well, I know this guy over in Bethlehem. He's just a boy, and he seems to like to play his harp to sheep, but he's really good. And so now all of a sudden the man, really the boy that was just pronounced to be the next king of Israel, that nobody knows is supposed to be the king of Israel, has now been moved into the palace and gets to watch from a front row seat of what it means to be the king and also what it means to not be the king. The Lord gave him some amazing first-hand knowledge experience to train him. But if that wasn't enough, you jump over to chapter 16. That's maybe the most famous story in the Bible outside of the cross and Jesus' birth, right? The David and Goliath. And we see, again, young boy David, who's, again, a tiny little fella, who goes to war with the giant. And his reasoning for why he can fight this giant is really, really simple. Man, when I was out in the field taking care of my father's sheep, I used a sling to kill a lion, and I used a sling to kill a bear. God helped me do that, and God's going to help me beat this giant too, the exact same way. And I'm going to use the tools he's given me. Saul, I don't want your tools. I don't need your tools. In fact, if I tried to do it the way that God made you to do it, I'm going to fail. But if I do it the way God made me to do it, and God helps me, then I'll succeed. And sure enough, we know that's exactly what happened. David killed Goliath with a sling, and then he took, Goliath's sword and chopped his head off. Here's what I told the students, and here's what I'm going to tell you too. The way that God prepares us in life for his service is going to look different for all of us because he's wired us all differently. We talked about that last week and talking about that more, but also the individual skills that he's given us. And some of those skills might feel obscure or weird. I can tell you firsthand, there were a lot of teenagers in the room last night they feel weird all the time because they're just growing into their bodies and they're figuring out what they're good at, right? And so this certainly hit them well. But I also know some adults still feel this way too. You know, I'm not sure that I'm actually good at anything that would be useful to the kingdom. David played the harp for sheep, right? And then all of a sudden, hey, the Lord has service for you. David was just protecting the flock of sheep. And apparently it wasn't much of a flock because they put a 13-year-old boy in charge of it. And lo and behold, the skills that he learned to be a shepherd all of a sudden became the exact skills needed to not only serve his kingdom at that moment, but the skills that he would also use to lead the people of God as king someday. We don't know how God is going to use the gifts he's given us. We just know for a fact God has given us all of our skills. In him we move and we live and we have our being. Everything about us he made up. We have these skills that he's given us, and we know that he wants to use our skills for his glory. So as you're talking about your class's abilities, remind them of that. You just don't know how God's going to use you. You never know when God's going to call on you to serve. So continue to sharpen the skills that he's given you, and then be ready to act. Guys, I love y'all. Can't wait to see you on Sunday. No, I'm not going to see you on Sunday. I'll see you next Sunday. By the way, I get to preach next Sunday, so pray for me about that too. But I'll be preaching this Sunday in New Boston. So pray for me. I'm praying for y'all. Love y'all. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.